Luther Sunderland was studying evolution and wanted to find out where the evidence is. So he visited major museums around the world, or wrote to major professors who believe in evolution, and asked them, what evidence do you have? They would write back, or when he talked to them face to face, they would say, well, we don't have any evidence, but somebody else has it. They all think somebody else has the evidence. When he contacted Colin Paterson is the one of the curators, the directors of the British Museum of Natural History. I believe it's in London or near there. They have the largest fossil collection in the world. Nobody has more fossils than the British Museum of Natural History. Display rooms and case after case after case of fossils on display that they've mounted and put up for display. Colin Paterson, the director of this museum, wrote a book about evolution. Wrote how he believes in evolution, how this animal changed to this animal. Well, Luther Sunderland read the book and noticed he told us about evolution, but he never showed us any examples. He never showed us the fossil of the missing link. And there'd have to be zillions of these. He said, Mr. Paterson, where are the missing links? I read your book. Why didn't you show us a picture of one? Colin Paterson wrote back a very interesting confession, and he has since been chided for it many times, I'm sure. Paterson wrote back and said, I fully agree with your comments on the lack of evolutionary transitions in my book. If I knew of any. You got the biggest fossil collection in the world and you don't know of any missing links? He said, if I knew of any, fossil or living. Well, that's an interesting confession. If it's living, how can it be a missing link? He said, if I knew of any fossil or living, I would certainly have included them. I will lay it on the line. There is not one such fossil. And he goes on to say, for which one can make an airtight or watertight case. If evolution had to be proven in a court of law, it would fail in the first round. Wouldn't make it to the appellate court or the circuit court or Supreme Court. It would fail in the local court. A freshman law student out of Podunk College could say, Your Honor, he doesn't have any evidence for evolution. It would be so easy to defeat this if evolution had to be proven in a court of law. But it doesn't have to be proven in a court of law. Evolution has to only sound convincing to the students going through high school. Guys like Stephen Gould, the communist professor at Harvard University, says the absence of fossil evidence for intermediary stages has been a persistent and nagging problem for evolution. When I debated Pigliucci at University of Tennessee, Knoxville, he is a botany associate professor. His PhD is in botany, the study of plants. I said, Mr. Pigliucci, what is your best evidence for evolution? What's the best evidence you know of? He said, the fossil record. Now hold it. You're teaching botany. Why do you think the best evidence is over in some other department, paleontology? I said, the fossil record of what? He said, the fossil record for the evolution of whales is the best evidence we have. Now think about it. Here's a PhD in botany thinking the evidence for evolution is over in anthropology department. But if you go to the anthropologists and say, where's the evidence for evolution? They'll say, oh, they've got it in the biology department. Ask the biologist, where's the evidence? Oh, the anthropologists have it. Or the geologists have it. Everybody thinks somebody else has the evidence. It's a shell game. You ever see those things at the carnival where they get 3 shells and they tell you to put a pea under there, and the guy tries to get you confused, switching them around? Evolution is a shell game. Each person thinks the pea is under a different one. There is no pea under any of them. Nobody has the evidence. Nobody has ever found any evidence for evolution. That's why about 10 years ago in our ministry we said, look, it started off, I guess 12 years ago, I wrote a letter to the editor in the local paper here, and I said, I will pay $1,000 for any evidence for evolution. A lawyer friend of mine, a couple of months later, said, hey, Mr. Hovind, let's make it $10,000. I'll back you up. Then a friend of mine from Oregon called me and said, hey, Brother Hovind, let's make it $250,000. I'll back you up. I'll keep the money in a special account. $250,000. I can't imagine having $250,000 just to sit around in an account someplace. He said, I'll back you up. So we put all kinds of publishing out there. We'll put $250,000 for evidence for evolution. He called me about a year later and said, hey, let's make it $1 million. I said, let's keep it at $250,000. Okay, I've got so much stuff printed that says $250,000. I don't want to go back and reprint everything. You could offer any amount of evidence, any amount of money for the. There is no evidence. Nobody's ever seen a dog produce a non-dog, let alone a dog come from a banana. But if you can ever get the evolutionists to see clearly what it is they believe, and I've never had one admit this, but they do believe dogs and bananas have a common ancestor, and the ancestor was a rock. If you boil it down, that's what you get to. They don't see it. I think what's happened here, we have a Romans chapter 1 situation. They don't want to retain God in their knowledge. So God gave them up to vain imaginations. The Bible says God will send them strong delusion. You have to be deluded to think we came from a rock. Now, if you want to believe that, that's fine, but that's not logical, it's not scientific, and that's certainly not going to help you when you stand before God one day. Some people are going to get before God and say, well, I studied the evidence and I believed in evolution. You had to want to believe that. A logical thinking person won't come to that conclusion from studying the evidence. When you look at a complex thing like a watch, I would come to the conclusion, somebody made this. I don't know who he is. Doesn't matter. I don't know where he lives. Probably never meet him. I don't have to meet him. I believe he exists. Or at least did exist. I've seen what he did. The painting is proof of the painter. The object is proof of the designer. That's all you need. I could probably analyze a few things about, I could tell you a few things about the guy that made this watch. Even though I don't know, never met him, probably never will. Probably speaks Japanese, lives in Japan apparently. I would say he's a logical thinker. He's got the numbers in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. He must think logically. I could probably deduce a few character traits. He must be patient, able to put them little bitty things on there. Must be precise. Must be very smart. He must have a good knowledge of electronics. He must have a good knowledge of different materials. He knows certain plastics can be used certain places, but they couldn't be used other places. You wouldn't want to use plastic in the watch band. How long would that last? You can use it for the buttons. He has a knowledge of quite a few things. A knowledge of materials. Never met the guy, but I can already tell you a few things about him. I've never met God, but I can tell you a few things about him. He's real smart. He's patient. He's loving. Just by seeing the creation, I can determine some things about the Creator. And that's the way it ought to be.